Okay, we have an excellent panel of faculty who are kind enough to take some of their extra free time during break time to speak to you, to share their experiences, their wisdom, their advice. And while you're eating, I hope you'll just listen and you'll have an opportunity for questions. So please jot it down if you're afraid you might forget, but we certainly want to answer your questions, and this is an excellent opportunity to do so. So, and competition.
I guess I'll go first. Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Korshin. I'm in the business school in marketing. I've been here about, let's see, this is my 6th year that I'm going into now. And so far it's been great. I love it. Really found Drexel to be an exciting and really energizing place to teach and do research. I was asked to just provide a few words on if I have any words of encouragement or of guidance of any kind for teaching, for being mainly in the classroom is I think where because I don't work as much with TAs in terms of grading and things like that. But in the classroom, I can tell you what I find that students tend to respond to. If you ask any student here, and I think this is most schools, what classes they like, they'll say the professors that they like the most. They'll say things like they're good at explaining things, they're clear, or they'll say things like they're organized, they're a fair grader, I knew what to expect, or they'll say that they were caring, they really cared about who I am as a person, and they want me to learn. And those are the 3 things that I always try to do in my classes. That's to be clear, to be consistent, and to be caring of the students. When you do those 3 things, and I'm constantly working on new ways to do that better, people respond very well. I'm just going to share one very quick example of how I do each. This has worked for me. You'll find your own ways, but feel free to steal these as well if you'd like. One is when I'm trying to be clear, what I try to do first is for every session that I have, I map out, this is what I think a student is arriving in class knowing about this topic. Whatever the topic is. Say, when they come to class, if I ask them to write something, this is more or less what they would say. And then I determine this is exactly what I want, this is where I want them to be. I want to change the way they're thinking about it by the end of the class. Everything in that class then is me asking questions, getting them to challenge the first assumptions that they have, and I try to bring them over and convince them that there might be a better way of doing it. But I very explicitly map that out for every single session that I do. To be consistent and make sure the students have a sense that their expectations, that I'm meeting their expectations and the expectations that I'm setting forth, I'm delivering on. To do that, one of the ways that I do it is I write a rubric for my grading, but I don't keep it to myself, I give it to them. And I make sure that they have it as early as possible so that they know what's a good answer, what's a bad answer, for example, on an exam. And for my final exam, I actually post up, I wrote myself like an example of a kind of incomplete, somewhat incoherent question that doesn't meet my criteria, and then another one that meets it more fully. And then they get a sense, they know when they're doing good work and when they're not. So when they get their grade back, when they turn something in, they already know what they're going to get for a grade. And that's how I try to be consistent. Finally, when I want them to know that I care how they do, there are a couple of things I do. One thing that I do, I call it the Korshin Lifetime Resource Guarantee. And what I do, I tell all my students that when the course ends, it's not really over yet. At least not necessarily their relationship with me, because I serve as a resource for them in the future. And if they come up against some sort of marketing problems that they have trouble with in the future, they can come and find me. And a number of them do. I get probably half a dozen every term students that come. I'm going to meet with somebody at 2 o'clock this afternoon who is from one of my former classes working on a business, and we're going to talk. I'm going to give him some advice. I'm not sure what he's going to ask me yet, but hopefully I'll be of help. That one, fun, just a quick, I don't really have much time left. I'm almost done, but let me just tell you, the deans saw the Quotient Lifetime Resource Guarantee. One time he said, I really like that concept. I think that's great, but you're in marketing. Can't you come up with a catchier name for it than that? The last thing on the caring, and this kind of goes with some of the back to some of the other advice also, is one thing that I try to do is early on in the course, I try to give people feedback right away. So the very first quiz, I spend a lot of time on that first quiz, jotting down notes on every single quiz that says, you got a 9, can you do a 10 next week? You got a 6, I know it's not what you were hoping for. Now that you know what to expect for the next one, let's see your best work on the next one. And the first one is really important because that's when you really start to set the tone, and then they know that you're following them. They know that they're sort of on the hook personally too, and it lights a bit of a fire with them, and they almost always respond. So I'll leave you with be clear in your class, be consistent, find ways to be as consistent as possible, and show them that you care. You'll do really well. And the students, I think it'll be not only better for the students, it'll make it more rewarding for you. Thanks.
Okay, I guess I'm next. My name's Dan King. I'm a faculty member in the chemistry department. I've been here, it's 11 years now. These numbers are always surprising. So I just want to mention a couple of challenges that I think you're going to face as you move into kind of this new situation. So one is the transition from kind of being on the student end of the classroom to being at the teacher end of the classroom. And many of you are going to want to be the friend of your students. I want to caution you against going down that road too far. It's fine to be friendly with your students, and you certainly want to demonstrate, as Dan just said, that you care about your students, but you are not their friend anymore. So that means do not respond to their texts at 2 in the morning, even if you are up. Do not respond to their emails, because what happens is the first time that you respond at that time, they will expect every other time for you to respond at that time. I mean, as a faculty member, I've woken up to a string of emails from a student who didn't understand why I was not replying to their emails at 2 in the morning. Like, well, because I was asleep at 2 in the morning. I understand that you may be awake at 2 in the morning, but I don't work a 24-hour day. So try and maintain that professional relationship. Don't give out, your cell phone number unless that's your only means of communication. Try and use an office phone. Try and use your official Drexel email for communication. So it will be a little bit of a challenge to transition into that teacher mode, but it's really important that you do that. Another challenge you're going to face is for most of you, I'm guessing, if you're teaching, you're going to be in that kind of in-between situation where you're not actually in charge of a course. So there's a faculty member who's in charge of the course, and maybe you're in charge of a section. Oftentimes that section is not even graded, or certainly not controlling the grade for the course. So there are course policies that are going to be in place that you did not implement. But the students are going to complain to you about those course policies. So you want to make sure that you have really good communication with the faculty member who's in charge of that course. You want to understand why those policies are in place, so you can explain that to the student. I understand you don't like this policy, this is why we have this policy in the course. If that does not satisfy the student, then it is not your responsibility to solve all problems. That is what the faculty coordinator for that course is for. So if you can't solve the problem for the student, send them on to the faculty member. So that is our job. So it's, well, one of our jobs is to handle those types of issues. So don't feel that you have to solve everything. Then another big challenge, and I'll finish on this one and hand it off to the other faculty here, so is time management. For those of you that are teaching and trying to do research and trying to do and taking classes, so that's going to be a big challenge. You're doing a lot more than maybe you are used to do. So there's going to be the desire to try and do everything all the time, but that's simply not possible. And it serves no one's purpose if you burn yourself out in the first 10 weeks. Then we don't have an effective TA, you're not going to do well in your classes, we don't have you in the research lab. So try and be realistic about what you can accomplish. And what that may mean is that the first term, you don't really get much research accomplished. And that's okay, and your faculty advisors will understand that, as long as you come to them and say, listen, it's my first term, and I can't do everything, and I'm teaching for the first time, and can I just do some reading this first term, and then we can start in the lab in the winter term. So the faculty members will understand. What will annoy them if you promise things and then can't deliver those. So as long as you're honest with students, with your advisor, you'll be in good shape.
Thank you. That was, you actually stole all my points, so I don't really know what to talk about now. No, but my name is Pramod. I am a professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department, and I'm also a hire out of the College of Engineering. I believe that I'm much closer to you guys. It's only a year and 8 months since I started as a professor, but before that I was a grad student in Drexel's ECE department. So I sometimes just do. I knew there was free food today, so I kind of dressed up like a grad student. By the way, Solmaz, there is my grad student. She's going to join my research group, but we will get papers out. Okay, you may teach as much as you want, but we will get some papers out this term. Okay, so that's a segue that I wanted to make from the last point that Dan made. One of the things that I realized during my 4.5 years of PhD studies was that it was a very sad realization that I'm a teacher at heart. And grad school is a very absurd kind of a place, because you're new grad students and you're going to be researching and exploring the unknown, but it's really, really crazy because the unknown is unknown and you really don't know what's going to happen. And be prepared for your papers to get rejected. Be prepared for your advisors seeming unreasonable and asking you to send them reports within 3 days of you just starting to write the report and so on and so forth. And I did all of that, and you will do all of that. And I made Solmaz do all of that already. She's not even joined the department yet. But the point is that what I realized is you have to go through this. It's a very personal experience, and you have to go through this. And at the end of the day, what will matter is how you manage your time, how you manage or how you balance the research aspect of things and the teaching aspect of things, because one of the things that you'll be responsible for is driving the learning objectives of the class, driving somebody else's teaching, driving the pedagogy of the course, driving the course content of the course, driving the assessment of the course. And all these things are very, very serious things, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your lab section, for your recitation section. And you are answerable to not only the professor who's teaching the class, but also the students who will actually ask you as to why they did not get the grades that they had anticipated. Now, since I'm on record, I'll try to find a more articulate way of saying this, but there is a culture at Drexel where there's a sense of entitlement in our students, in our undergrads. How many of you guys are Drexel undergrads? And it's part of it is because the generation of students that we get, These are students, I deal with students who are freshmen or sophomore and then grad students. And especially the younger ones, the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, you have to realize that they grow up, they have pretty much grown up in these things. So you really cannot just tell them what they should be doing. You really cannot just be like, trust me, because they will look up online and they will say, no, I don't believe you. So one of the things that you should realize is the moment you lose respect, or your students lose respect for you, is game over. No matter what you do from that point, it's game over. Okay? So as a teaching assistant, as a teaching fellow, as an assistant teacher of some sort, what you should be absolutely prepared with is an authoritative understanding of the material at hand. You should be the person who is running the classroom, who's running the course content at that point in time. The moment students find that you are hesitant, you are not clear, that's when things start breaking down. If you find that you're kind of not 100% sure about what's going on in the classroom, acknowledge that, tell them, I'll get back to you, and then get back to them. Okay? Emailing is very important. Just to share an anecdote, I have my office right there, and I have an office phone that I forward to my cell phone because I'm hardly in my office. I'm running around most of the times, and that's primarily for my students or research colleagues and whatnot. It was Valentine's Day earlier this year, and I was having a really nice dinner with my girlfriend, and sure enough, the phone rang because I forgot to cancel the call forwarding. And sure enough, the student was unhappy about the grade that he or she got. And sure enough, they wanted to talk to me and have a counseling session right at that point. And sure enough, my girlfriend was not happy about that. So, answering emails, answering text messages, there's a professional way of doing this, and that's, you have business hours, you have hours during which there's a reasonable sort of expectation. But if students email you after midnight, just be very careful. As a TA, I used to do that. I used to be up at 4 in the morning answering my students' emails, and I think they know. But I also realized in retrospect that, it might just be in your best interest to draw that line somewhere, because at the end of the day, you're expected to research and produce results. And that's one of the things that you will have to balance. I guess, any other questions that you guys have? I guess all of us are speaking. Thank you very much.
I realize now that when I walked in, I should have jumped to the head of the line and said, I'll go first. Because obviously we all keep talking about the very similar points. But I know that you're trying to figure out this balance. But one of the things that maybe I wanted to say was, think about the time in the classroom. So you do have to balance your time afterwards. You do have to set those boundaries. Students should be coming during office hours. But when you're in the classroom, realize that you owe them 100% of your attention. Sometimes we get so connected ourselves, thinking about what paper we're trying to get out, or that I have my own exam or something coming up, you might not be completely focused. If you get to know your students, they will actually be fairly forgiving when you don't know something, or you have to ask them. So simple things like making sure that you get to know their names. I think most of you are going to be in smaller sections. When you start to get into larger sections, that can be a problem. But if they kind of feel a connection with you, you're going to be able to have a good relationship, and that you'll be able to establish those boundaries, and you'll be able to know when they really have a need. So when you're in the classroom, when you're in the lab, they get your undivided attention. I'm from biology. My name's Laura Dool, and I've been here going on 17 years now, so I think I'm one of the persons that have been around Drexel for quite a bit of time. And so I've seen a lot of students come and go. For those of you that might be in lab classes, safety first. If nothing else, we have to make sure that you know what you're doing when you're there from the standpoint of safety. You are in charge of those students. Make sure that you know who's there, what they're doing at all times. So I would also just encourage you to think of the faculty that you're working with as part of your team now. You're making that transition from maybe being an undergraduate and trying to see it from the other side, but embrace that. Talk to the faculty about why they're doing things, the pedagogy behind things. You don't just have to be the delivery person in the lab. We would like you to engage, whether it's the lab, the classroom, and really start to embrace what we're trying to do. Just to emphasize, as everyone has said, we are a team. It's our mission to educate the students that we have here at Drexel, and you are part of that team. And so therefore, it's very important to us to have you doing well in the classroom, and we're really here to help and assist that. So don't just stop today talking about and having conversations like this. Reach out to each other, your fellow TAs, talk about what you're having issues, but use the other resources around you. So welcome, and I'll pass it one more down the line.
The guy that gets to say ditto. I didn't know when I dressed this morning I was dressed like a grad student. I just dress like this because I'm fat. I'm Ernie Hakkinen. I got them all beat. I have 21 years here. I taught at Drexel in the 80s as an adjunct while I was getting my PhD at Temple. And I really liked the atmosphere here, but there were no jobs. And I went away and I taught at several other places, liberal arts schools and Marquette and North. And just really wanted to come back to the East Coast, but I really liked Drexel and I had the opportunity to come back. And this place is an evolving, really quickly evolving place and atmosphere. And believe me, you're in a great spot. You're also in a great spot as a, well, you're in a strange spot as a grad student and as a teaching assistant or a researcher. You feel like you're in between. You know, I went to grad school because I realized I wasn't going to be Alice Cooper's guitar player. He had a famous song called "I'm 18, I'm not a boy, and I'm not a man. What am I?" You know, it's sort of like you. You're sort of in between. You know, well, you're really not. I think if you realize this, I think all my colleagues and the colleagues across the university see you not necessarily as a student and not as a teaching assistant. You're our junior colleagues. That's why I'm here on my time off, and Dr. Lynn knows that I wouldn't miss this, because I think this is really important to welcome you and to tell you that you're welcomed as our junior colleagues. So you are much more of a man, woman in Alice Cooper's song, and you are part of the faculty. And I think I know we see you as part of the faculty. And you should, and if you realize that, I think that makes you a much more, somebody said a team player in our eyes. In teaching, you'll never learn more about your subject. You know, you learn more about your subject teaching it than you will in a classroom. I think that's across the board. And you're going to learn a lot about yourself. So what you should try to learn is say, "I don't know." Don't be afraid to say, "I don't know." I spent my first 10 years trying to answer questions. I had no idea what I was talking about, you know? And then I was afraid to come back to class after I learned what the right answer was and say it, you know? Because I was always right. You know, I'm also an only child and an egomaniac, but, you know, don't be afraid to say, "I don't know." We'll look that up or tell them. What do you think? Or how, you know, can you look that up now? So don't be afraid to go with your personality. I once, when I was teaching at Marquette, this guy kept winning teaching awards, and I had a student who was coming into my office who had both of us as a teacher, and I said, "How can I be more like Craig Porter?" She said, "You can't. He's warm and fuzzy. You'll never be warm and fuzzy." He said that right to me, all right? And the fact matter is, though, I learned what I was good at. Right? And I think I'm much more warm and fuzzy than I used to be. But in any case, learn about yourself and remember that you're our junior colleagues.
Okay, how about some questions?
know, this is what you'll experience in the classroom. So, are there any questions? And then as soon as you walk out, the emails will start. Had questions. So think of yourself as our students right now.
One of the best teachers I've ever met said, you have to be able to live with silence. In this moment, you just stand there and stare them down. They'll come up with questions. And it's a very good thing. Now me, of course, you can see, I feel the need to talk. Because I can't stand silence. I learn how to live with silence.
Silence and self-doubt. Did I do a good job, or did I just waste their time?
So I actually just read a study where they asked faculty how long they thought they were waiting for a student's response. You know, how long were they quiet waiting for students to respond, and then they actually observed that classroom. And so most of the faculty they surveyed said that they were probably waiting about 10 seconds before they jumped in and started to move the conversation along. And when they actually timed it, it was like 2 seconds. So when you're up at the front, that's going to be one of the things that you're going to have to adjust to, is that silence, as uncomfortable as silence is for the students, it's going to seem like an eternity for you as a teacher. It's like, oh my God, that's like minutes. But it's really just seconds.
And there's an official term for this. It's called wait time. That's an actual term. If you're in education, you will learn that term.
So we're going to wait you guys out.
Well, I have a question. What would you recommend if a TA has not really connected with the advisor or the teacher in charge of the class? And it should come from the top down. Here are our policies. This is what we're expecting of you. But let's face it, not everybody does that. There are a lot of professors that are very busy with their research, and they don't always give the guidance that a TA is expecting or requires. And so it puts the TA in a very awkward position. I've had somebody come to me and say, what should I do? So what advice would you give these TAs?
So my advice, the first place to go is your fellow graduate students. So if you're in a course with lots of sections and you're not getting the direction that you're looking for from the faculty member in charge, then go to one of the other TAs who's teaching a section and see if they have a better understanding. Or you can also take advantage of the other graduate students in your department who also taught that course. So what you may find is that those TAs who've already successfully navigated through that course have figured out the answers to the questions that you're looking for.
Here's a question that sort of ties into setting boundaries and everything. What are you expected? What should you do in the event that a student just isn't getting the material for one reason or another? How much effort do you put into pursuing them if they don't come to you, and if they do come to you and you still can't get through to them? What should you do?
So just to put things in perspective, I teach a sophomore class in the engineering curriculum, and we have 850 students throughout the year, and there's a cohort A that goes to co-op, and then they come back. And so at any given point in time, we have approximately 400 students in my class, and starting this fall, I'm teaching the incoming freshman class of 1,000 plus students. So logistically speaking, it's a huge operation. And managing that, it's more challenging than actually teaching it. One of the things that I tell my TAs, because I get TAs who are my own students, but also students of other professors, and you have to be respectful of the fact that the other professors are lending their students to your class. You need to ask yourself, are you doing a reasonable job of explaining the students, right? And if it does not take a lot to sort of get a correct answer, a correct read on the student's motivation and the student's propensity to learn from you. B, you may find yourself in a situation where there is a co-TA, somebody else who's teaching the class with you, and if you are not able to clearly sort of articulate or get across to them in a manner that they learn you might want to just hand them off to the other TA and just say, hey, you know what, just try somebody else. Sometimes that heterogeneity works in the classroom, outside of the classroom. At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, you have office hours, you have an allocated amount of time that you're being hired for, and if you have done everything within reasonable limits of sanity, as they call it, you might want to just talk to the professor. A lot of times my TAs talk to me and say, hey professor, this student is just not able to get this material, and then I schedule a one-on-one time with them. Sometimes I spend 2 hours with them, to the point where I'm convinced that we have reasonably given them and supported them or scaffolded all their learning. At that point we draw the line. We basically say, we've given you the TA time, we've given you my personal time, we've given you somebody else's time. Now it's up to you to sort of to take charge of your learning.
Can I just add one thing, is that there are other resources in the sense that you are their TA